Okay. All right, Benjamin. We are Benjamin Radnage in Australia. We are halfway through our conversation, just chatting. And we're not going to get all presenterist now, but we'll keep chatting. But now, you're telling, just to set the scene, you're telling me about this Netflix show you watched where this guy is calling people out and healing them and prophesying and speaking in tongues, supposedly, and all that, and is depicting things that the evangelical church does. But then at the end of the show, it turns around and says, the evangelical church has it wrong. You have the power in your own body to heal yourself, to prophesy, to all these things. So he does things in the name of Jesus in the show, but then discounts everything.
Yeah. But
it's just human.
Yeah. But the interesting thing in the show, he uses the name of Jesus. So his language and the way he positions and prays for people is all language that we see in the Bible. It's the way Jesus was praying for people, yet he was doing it facetiously in a way.
But when he prays, you say he prays for people. Is he praying for people, or is it just a confession over people? You know what I mean? Like,
no,
that is a difference. Like, is he just saying stuff to people? Like, or because for us, we ask Jesus, Holy Spirit, Father to come and operate through us.
Yeah.
Onto people.
Well, I think we do both. We also make it, it's quite big in the church now to declare something finished. You know, we will say, you know, we declare in the name of Jesus, this thing is done. You know, it's gone. You know, pain is gone, or that's gone. And he does that to an extent. But there is also some where he prays and he petitions to God for God to come and remove the thing. So he prays for a lady who has, he prays for a lady who has terrible eyesight. He makes a big thing. He takes her glasses off. She can't read. He puts her glasses back on. Then he asks God, would you come and remove her poor sight and restore her sight? And then if that one's not very fancy, he moves his hand away and she goes, oh my goodness, I can read. And then he does something even more odd. Is then after he finishes doing that, he says to another lady, he says, there's somebody in the room who's doubting me. And he's like, it's Thomas or something. And he goes and finds this guy who puts his hand, he's like, yeah, I think you're full of crap. He goes, good, come on stage. So he brings the guy up on stage.
Thomas the doubter.
I think it was Thomas. Maybe I've made that really nice. But
Thomas just get a bad rap, man.
I think it was. Maybe I've made that up. But anyway, whatever the guy's name was, he brings him on stage and he says, yeah, I don't believe. He says, I don't believe God's real. And he says, B, I think you're full of crap too. So he covers the guy's eyes and he says, God, would you show him that you're real? And then he removes his hand and the guy's like, I can't read. He's like, I can't see. And he gives him this book and he says, read the book. And he tries to read it and everything's blurry. And then he says, God's showing you that he is real because he's removed your sight for his time to get you to see better. He goes, now he'll give it back. And then he covers his eyes and he says, Jesus, would you return the man's sight and give him faith to know you? And then moves his hand, the guy can see again.
But then at the end of the show, he says it's not.
But then at the end of the show, so he's doing all this seriously, but at the start he says, I'm going to use the language and he makes a few facetious jokes about the tithing bucket being filled and bring your money and all those jokes. But then at the end he says everything you've received here is real, but he says not like the evangelical church says it is. It's not God who's done this to you. You've done this to yourself, because as a human you have the power to alter your being in a way that you don't have to carry sickness and you don't have to carry depression and anxiety, but you get to decide that as a human.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do with that? Was my question to you.
Dude, for me, it made me look at the things that we get excited about in the church and go, we actually need to be looking for God in these things and seeing God move in these things. So we recently had a guy come into church and pray for guys, and Holy Spirit moved and people were falling over. People were, but after the service, when I went around and talked to some guys, not to check how they were, but just to see what God did in them, the stories they had while they fell were phenomenal. Freedom from stuff, from oppression or excitement in a journey God's been showing them, and he revealed more to them as they were on the ground, all kinds of wild stuff. And I thought, okay, it's got nothing to do with the falling over. Is not the exciting part. What God does in that moment, should be the exciting part. Who God is in that should be the thing we focus on, not the...
Sure. I mean, you know, I've always sort of thought that I don't think the devil ever heals. You know what I mean? I don't think the devil heals. I don't think would give somebody sickness and then heal that person on a TV show. But I do think that there can be oppression and demonic oppression where, where a demon could actually have give somebody a shoulder pain or whatever, and then on that show, whatever, lift that pain from them or lift that oppression in order to bring confusion.
Mm.
Like I said to you earlier, what's more powerful, to keep somebody in pain or to have somebody in confusion? I think if the devil wants to keep people from God, confusion's a much more devastating weapon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And often pain brings confusion or sickness or, things that happen in this world. But, I mean, for me, it's this, and this sounds so, I don't know, if I go back in my Christian years, I would have been like, oh, you cushy little, soft, little flaky Christian to say this. But, dude, it's love, man. Love is a difference.
Mm.
Somebody can get up, and this is not only on a Netflix show like that, but in our churches as well. If people fall over, fine. If they get healed, fine. They speak in tongues, they prophesy, whatever. Even the scriptures say, if you prophesy and you do not have love,
yeah, it's worth nothing.
So how many people walked out of that show really feeling loved?
Yeah.
They can't walk out of there feeling loved by that guy.
Yeah, sure.
But if you walk out of a church, whatever's happened to you, there's people that walk out of the church not healed, but the faith and the care that was laid on them and the love. We don't understand why some people don't get healed, but there's so much love on them that they understand their identity, they understand their value to God. And I think it becomes more and more the core truth as we move forward. We'll see more times like this and more things like this happening. But show and tell is not...
So let me ask you this, though.
And we say this as well. We don't need miracles to prove God.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go next. Because
we both think the same. Yeah.
If we see a big fancy church leader come into a city, come into a town, come into your church and perform all these amazing things and do all this stuff, and people walk away wowed, they go back to their life and they feel no impression of love, they feel nothing really changed, they just fell over in a service earlier. And I'm just picking on that one because I think that's the most readily thing we see in the church, I think.
Well, I don't think you're picking. I think, it's amazing. When we're in church world, we forget that the world outside looks and sees these things and has questions or comment about this. We think that only the people inside our buildings see these things. Yeah. Man, I've spoken to people that have never set their foot inside a church, but they have questions that are like, wow, how do they know what's going on and what to ask? And that's not the question. If we as Christians aren't going to question this stuff and find the right language and the right truth about it, we have a serious issue.
And just for the sake of it, I'm not flaking or questioning this stuff by any means. I mean, just last weekend, my wife and I were in a church in Adelaide visiting friends, and we were rocked. Like my wife had never, just was touched by the Holy Spirit like never she has ever been before. Like,
that's awesome.
Like completely changed her grid on all this stuff. Wow. So I'm not saying God doesn't do it at all.
Where'd you go to Paul?
Yeah, with Paul and Trace, yeah. Cool. And dude, in worship, and just went and privately asked Trace for prayer, and just got like bamboozled.
That's awesome.
Paul comes to the front because there was no special prayer time. There was no, hey, if you want this, just went and quietly asked Trace for prayer for something they were talking about earlier in the day. And Paul comes forward to me because I was a bit toward the front, and they were behind me. Paul comes, he goes, hey bro, some things going on back there. And I said, She's in good hands, brother. Hopefully. But that changed both of our grid, not from a place of does God do this? Because I think we see that and we see the fruit of it as well. But going, man, there is something happens when God enters our space and his presence fills us. There's something undeniable that happens, and it's almost as though our human bodies can't fathom the full presence, or even I think it's the full. I think it's a snippet of the presence of God in us, or on us rather. And I think that what this thing does is it challenges me, like you were saying earlier, where we can't judge when someone does something odd, but I go, I hope the love of God has come through that thing, whether it be falling on the floor or yelling or whatever it is that happens. I hope the love of God has actually radiated through you. And that's what the expression of that was.
I mean, I'll be honest, like I see stuff at the church I'm at the moment that I'm like, I don't have a grid for, because I don't feel that. I don't feel that happening to me. And, the way people laugh or the way they engaging with God, or, I don't know, just certain things. And if I think back on my life a few years ago, I would have been like, oh, I don't know about that. And I would have been really blocked off to it. But I find myself being more in a place of, wow, I want God to break me out of my mold, I want to experience him however he wants me to experience him. Now, if I'm never going to be the guy that laughs or shakes or falls down or whatever it is, I'm okay with that. Like I'm completely confident in the Father's love. And to be honest, I'm more comfortable with that. But there's another side of me that goes, I really want him to make me uncomfortable. And that's difficult. It's a tough line to cross. Everybody looks at people experiencing God in a sort of what we would deem a weird way and go like, oh, they're doing it for show or this or that. But I've met people that experience God that way, and they are introverted, loving, kind. They do not want attention on them, but yet God will hit them in a way that draws attention to them. And not that it should draw our attention to them, but it does, because it's out of our grid. And I've met them, and I know they're not like that.
Yeah.
So then it begs the question, how difficult is it if you're an introvert to actually cross that line? Okay, God, just touch me however you want to touch me. That's hard, man. People always point the finger and go, oh, you're showing off, whatever. No, it is very difficult to stand in a community of people and let God touch you how he wants to touch you, and stand up afterwards. No, you got to look each other in the eye. It's hard, dude. It's hard to go. It's very hard. We got to turn the conversation on that thing.
Yeah. And I know for a fact, bro, that my wife would not have in a million years did what she did in this service. And to the point, she'd never done anything like that before.
What did she do? Tell me. I'll edit it out.
Okay. So
you people, sorry, you can't listen to this. You can come back in a few seconds.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So we went to our private time. Now we're back. Hello, everybody. You didn't get to hear the private stuff. But now we're back. Now, just on this whole thing, because we've been down like 40 different rabbit trails for the last 40 minutes. And I want to close this video. I want to close this off now, so that we didn't leave people hanging. You know what I mean? I remember a time, from my perspective, I'll close it. I remember a time when I went to the front to be prayed for, to have hands laid on me. And it was an evangelist guy, Tim Story. He came to visit in South Africa, and he asked if you felt like you have a call of God in your life as a leader, come forward. And there were a lot of young people that went forward, Mm-hmm. And I remember standing in that line, and I was like, Lord, I'll receive everything you have for me, but I don't want to fall down.
Yeah.
I don't want to fall down. And not that I didn't want to fall down. I'd fallen down many times under the power of God. Not heavily, but I had. And I was brought up around that, so it's kind of normal for me. But I was just like, I wanted it to be pure. I didn't want it to be a show of any kind. And I didn't want to conform to what everybody else was doing. So that's what my heart was like, Lord, just let me, dogs are starting to play, perfect timing. Just let me receive or whatever. And he came, and before he even touched me, man, I don't even know if he touched me. I fell so hard, straight down. the power of God is so strong. And I felt God say to me as I was falling, if you want to lead, I'm in charge, not you.
Yeah.
You know? And I know it was God. I know it was the power of God. And, you know, that could even look weird to people. But to me, that was very real. And so just in this conversation of things looking weird from the outside and this and that, we just got to know that.
But see, what was the most...
To judge it, and two, it's usually very real to that person, to the point where it's probably hard for you to even explain.
But what was the most important thing for you in that moment?
I think the love of God was revealed to me in the way that it didn't feel like he was violating my objection. It didn't feel like he was violating my boundaries. It felt like he was showing me in the best, most loving way he could, who's in charge and the safest and the best, healthiest route for me to take in our relationship. It felt highly relational. It didn't felt disciplinary, like it was like, I'm in charge, not you. It was like, son, I understand, but you got to understand something about me. And this is what it is. I am God, not you. I am in control, not you. Just trust me. And as much as it was that, it was also testing. I could stand up from there and go, oh man, you know, God just walked all over me. But it didn't feel like that. So my response wasn't like that.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, for me, it was a very precious moment, actually.
That's where I think it had nothing to do with you falling over. Had everything to do with how you and God communicated in that time, how God communicated something to you. The falling over is just a result of him being there and the communication. My issue in it is when we make it about that. So for me, I've never fallen over. Yeah. I've been filled with fits of laughter once, and that was the most incredibly joyous, unusual thing ever.
Yeah, and I've never had that. So
yeah. So we go, okay, so, but also for me, and it's getting to the point where I'm like, God, I don't even know anymore. I will, and you know this, I will cry. Like the other day, I was standing in a meeting and I was just like ugly crying, like almost to the point where I was making that noise, you know, where you like, needs to pull their head in. Yeah. I was almost at that point, and I could not stop it. And I came out of that meeting and it had nothing to do with that, because what God showed me in that time was what it was all about. But when we start making it about the falling over or even the crying or laughing, when we make it about that, we've missed the point, I think. And that's what that whole video challenged in me, was that I looked at it and I went, man, if this guy can randomly do this thing, then it's not about that. It's about the thing that happens while that's going on.
Right.
I think in that place it was darkness, but in a church, when the church does it, like you just said, you come out of it, and like my wife said, you come out of it without any fear, with freedom, in most cases joy, just a clarity and a love where you go, I don't know what happened. I fell over, or I laughed, or I jumped up and down. But that's not the point. The point is this: God touched me in that time. You know, he showed me something I've never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's futile if it's just about your body being healed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand it's difficult to live with. I mean, it's horrible to live with physical difficulties, sickness, disability, and obviously we want them healed. We don't want people to suffer, but
yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like a horrible thing to say, that it's not the main thing, but it isn't the main thing, because it's temporal. Your relationship with God, which is eternal, is the main thing. So yes, if we elevate the temporal above the eternal, we've got a problem. The reality is that we have both.
Yeah.
We have both available, but it must stem from the eternal to the temporal, not an attempt from the temporal to the eternal. Same as Tozer writes, like science is not necessary to prove God. It's wonderful that science is starting to learn that God exists.
Yeah.
But we don't need science to prove God. We don't need science to eventually turn around and go, actually, God is real. And this part of science proves it. That's fine. It doesn't make God any more real. And it's the same with signs and wonders. Like, it's an expression of God's love, and it's an expression of how good he is. But it doesn't prove that he's real. God is real, full stop.
And it's a sign of the power of God, I believe. I think that we see Jesus operate miracles and then teach out of that place, because he's saying, this is the power of my God, now let me show you who he is. This is the evidence of who my Father is, now let me teach you more about who he is. When we're constantly looking for the evidence, we fail to just go, God, you're so good, I'll worship you in this place. And yeah, of course, we want to see guys healed out of ailments and poverty and those sorts of things. Of course we do, but not at the expense of having a relationship with the Father.
Yes, but at the same time, we must not be so concerned about teaching people what just happened.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we feel like we have to explain everything.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, that laughing thing, explain it to me. Well, do you want me to explain it to you? I'm going to give you the long version. Do you have time? So I'm going to teach you exactly what happened there. Joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What more do you want to know? It's a characteristic of God. Joy.
Yeah.
That person fell over and they lie on the floor like they were asleep for an hour. Peace.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not, we want to teach people things that we have no vocabulary for. It's just,
Yeah, dude, during worship yesterday, started off a bit rocky. The guy, incredible worship leader, his voice was a bit cracky, and I was thinking, man, he's got something's gonna happen here. And all of a sudden,
what happened here, mate? Oh, this could be a real bad service if you
he pushes in, and he goes into this quiet moment, and he starts singing in tongues, and in the most angelic, pitch perfect voice. I don't think I've heard a guy sing like that. I'm not exaggerating. This is in our church yesterday, and it was phenomenal. And I was standing there thinking, it was like quiet time. You couldn't sing along because he was singing random things in this most ridiculous, incredibly beautiful voice. I'm standing there thinking exactly that. I need to get up and explain to people what's happening. And then I just went, actually, if they're honestly worshiping, they don't need to be explained what's happening, because they can feel what's happening. Yeah. Dude, come out of it. People were like, that worship was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Brad comes over to me. We've been worshiping for 45 minutes, close to an hour. And Brad comes over and he goes, dude, we shouldn't have cut that off. It was too short.
Yeah.
And I felt like that too. I was like, yeah, maybe it was too short. Look at the clock. And I was like, I mean,
yeah,
it's unfortunate that we go to a clock, but.
Well, that's the thing I must say. I've been in churches where worship has been difficult like that. And the leaders have been like, okay, it's not happening. Let's just cut it off. Let's just move on. Yeah. And I don't know if it really sat well with me that, I'm now in a church where it felt like we had a kickstart worship a little bit for like the first 30 minutes the other day. But we just pushed and pushed and pushed. And then, like, boom, it was amazing. Like, the presence of God fell. And sometimes I think he wants us to contest for it, wants us to push for it, And I'm now in a church where they will push for the presence, and we will worship until the presence comes, and then that's the start.
Yeah.
Then we'll go for it, and we'll push further, and then we'll let God. And man, I can just see how God honors that. I can just see how God honors that desire and that pursuit.
We don't run to a clock as it's ticking in the background.
Yeah.
There is a rough sort of, you feel like, man, you don't want people here past, which is sad that we do think like that, but especially in Australia, people think like that,
Yeah. But you just got to, you know, you can't let people set the tone. You got to set the tone, and you can be like, look, guys, we want to honor your time. If you want to go, feel free to go. But we're going to carry on, and it's up to you. Now, what's really amazing is when we first heard about the church that we're at now, we were like, people were like, there's guys that there for like 3 or 4 hours, you know, and they just keep going. It's like never ending. And we were like, yeah, the position we were in then, like we were like, we're not going to spend 3 hours in the church. We'll go and we'll, you know, do the 2 hours or whatever. But now, dude, I don't know, the presence of God and the pursuit of God is like, we could spend 6, 7, 8 hours there. We don't care. Like, we don't want to leave, you know. And that's kind of where you got to go. If you start prioritizing that more without caring about people, because you do care. I know, I've been in your context. It's hard in Australia to not care because people are so rigid about that.
Yeah. And too, I just want to say this, is that church you're in has built that culture over a long time. And I think that too is important in like I was saying, you're like giving people a little bit more, and then that hunger, a hunger of a people will drive that thing into a culture where most people go, we're here to see this, you know, we're here to be with God, we're here to
I agree and I disagree. I agree that they built it over a long period of time, but one of the things I teach as well is that, and this is scriptural because you see it in Revelation, is that a testimony, if one person has a testimony, even if you weren't there, you can grab that testimony for yourself.
Yeah.
Dogs are playing. So it's the same as how they build. You know, now you can hear about, the presence pulls people and they don't want to leave for like 6 hours. And you can go, okay, Lord, I'm going to grab that. I'm part of the family. I'm the same family. Hey, stop it. And I'm going to grab that. And we're just going to go. It's kind of like the analogy of if you pull the Band-Aid off slowly, okay, then the person often pulls away, right?
Yeah.
If you just pull it off quick, it's done. And some of our church leadership has to be like that. And I think the more we see the pressing urgency of revival wanting to come and we're needing the church to reform, some of the changes are going to have to happen quickly and people are going to have to deal with it, or they're going to leave and come back, or whatever's going to happen. But we don't have time to waste. And you kind of got to go, you know what, guys? We're making a bit of a radical push here, but we've seen this culture, we've seen that this is how it is, and you know, they pursue the presence, and this is just what it is. We're not going to be bound to the clock anymore. Now, if you've got to grow into that, that's fine. Leave when you want to leave, that's fine. But we're going to try something here that we're seeing the presence fall on another part of our family in another part of the world, and we're going to go for it. So boom, the Band-Aid's off. We're just going. It's messy. There might not be a sermon. Don't have to explain it. We don't know what's going to happen. We're going. Let's go. Worship. And then it's almost like, yes, a culture can be built over a long period of time, or it can be built in a day.
And there's areas of the church, dude, that's exactly what we're doing. I've said to guys, we don't have time to dance around this thing. Just make the changes. Let's just make changes that need to be made and actually just start doing this thing properly, which has been incredible.